Welcome into a brand new edition of Bleav in Heels Hoops here on the Bleav Podcast Network. So I'm your host, Desmond Johnson, joined by my co-host, R.L. Bynum from the Tar Heel Tribune. You can catch us every week in season during the 2023-24 basketball season for the North Carolina Tar Heels. We are your source for all info regarding them. Special guest host Pete Chilcutt in the house joining us again this week. Weird week. Just weird stretch of games that Carolina's had here surrounding the Duke game. I feel like the last two episodes we've come in after a loss. I think that's right. Which is a little different from when we first started the podcast. Every week we were talking about wins and stuff. Let's just get into this here from last night. I had the misfortune of, I thought I could make it through the evening without finding out the result because I had to work last night. I had to call basketball games, and I got it done right around 9:15. And I had successfully avoided Facebook. I had avoided Twitter. I had no idea what was going on with the game. And then one of my idiot friends messages me on my phone. And it's like, oh, so Carolina lost tonight, huh? I'm just like, then I had to go to Facebook. I go to Facebook and there's a group I monitor in there. And somebody else had posted on a previous post I had posted, joking about Carolina losing. I'm not even home yet. I'm still, 10 minutes away from my house. So I haven't even got to watch the game. And they're like, don't even watch it. Syracuse shot out the roof. They were making circus shots. They just saved you time. You don't have to watch it. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I have to do a pod on this at 11:30 in the morning. I have to watch it now. But now I'm watching it knowing we lost. So it's a completely different feeling going into it, waiting for the bottom to fall out. You just don't know where it is in the game. And that's kind of how the game was. And I found myself kind of cheering a little bit during the game when they were coming back in the second half, and forgetting that they were going to lose this game. Pete, you called this game for the Tar Heel radio network, correct? So being in that building, what do you think was the major difference between the last time we saw Syracuse, where we blew them out by 30-something points in the Dean Dome, to last night?
Yeah, well, I talked a little bit in the pregame. This league doesn't get a lot of respect sometimes, but top to bottom, there's good teams in this league, and there's dangerous teams at home. And they hadn't been playing well. They had lost a few, maybe would be considered struggling in the league. But when you get a home team that has a little bit of a edge on them because what we did last time, they came out unafraid and ready to prove that they kind of weren't that kind of team. And from the get-go, and that's the thing that a little concerning last few games, that from the get-go these teams are jumping on us and getting kind of a good start. And I had mentioned in the pregame, this is the kind of team you want to stomp on at the beginning to kind of get their confidence shook in a little bit. And then from the get-go, and it was just rough, and that I kept on thinking that they can't keep on hitting these shots, and then they kept on hitting these shots, and it felt like we, for better or worse, in the first half, were doing a pretty good job contesting the shots, but then it also felt like those were the shots that Syracuse wanted to get. When the team is getting the shots they want and then making them, you got to almost figure out how do you make them uncomfortable at some point? And we switched up some stuff in the second half, but by then they had that momentum and they kept on hitting those shots. I mean, it was just a very tough night for us defensively. I think the undersized guards were kind of exposed a little bit. They were in front of those guys a lot of times, just they couldn't challenge those shots. So just a tough night overall for us defensively for sure.
R.L., I thought it was peculiar. I mean, granted, it was working, but I don't know if it was working as effectively as the other way around, where it felt like Hubert made a switch and had Elliot Cadeau right there at the free throw line in the soft spot of that 2-3 zone, where the previous game it was Harrison Ingram. And Ingram, if I'm not mistaken, had like a career night or something that night, playing Syracuse when we were blowing them out. This game, for whatever reason, they switched it to Cadeau, and sometimes it would work, but sometimes it was almost like he was too small to play that spot. And it's like Syracuse kind of figured it out a little bit in the second half. What were your thoughts on that? And why do you think they had Cadeau there instead of Ingram? Because Ingram was kind of posted out past the 3-point line.
Yeah, initially it looked like it was a good idea. Obviously, that's the way to beat a Syracuse zone. And boy, we thought we were done with that when Boeheim returned. But I'd kind of rather have Elliott driving from the perimeter than positioned in the middle like that. So I'm not so sure it worked out as well as it initially looked like it was working.
So Harvard fall to 19-6 overall, 11-3 in conference play. Still atop of the conference. They're half a game ahead of Duke. We'll show the standings here in just a bit because there's a whole lot of movement underneath Carolina as the rest of the pack is starting to catch up here. Judah Mintz had 25 points, 16 in the second half. J.J. Starling had 23 points. I thought he played one of the better games probably of his career. He just looked really comfortable. I knew it was a wrap when he hit that bank shot 3-pointer with with the shot clock expiring. I was like, oh, so it's one of those games where like everything they throw up is going to go in, and pretty much everything did. They shot 63% from the field for the game and 47% from three as a team. So a lot of times, people want to joke about Carolina losing, but that's going to beat a lot of teams. If you're doing that, like this is the 47% from three alone was enough. And Carolina dug themselves a hole. They missed the first 10 shots of the second half, so they didn't make it easy on themselves at all. So I feel like they deserve to lose that game. They deserve to lose that game. They deserve to lose the Georgia Tech game. What do you think it is? So let's get to that part here. Do you think there's anything to be concerned about? Because although they've lost 3 of their past 5, those combined 3 losses are about what, like 8 points, 10 points, something like that between all 3 of them. So is it time to push the panic button in Chapel Hill, or is it just the ACC is better than what people have been talking about throughout the year? So when these losses happen, we're more shocked than we probably should be. What are your thoughts on that, Pete? Like in terms of where the Tar Heels are right now?
Panic? No panic button for sure. But last time I wasn't concerned. I think I'm more concerned now, just from the standpoint of you wouldn't expect some of these starts from a senior experience-based team. So coming out flat at home, maybe that was a one-off. But coming out on the road against a team that you kind of know what to expect from and have scouted them and played them before, and just coming out, and you said it earlier, their whole team looked very comfortable out there, and that's never a good thing when you're playing against a team, especially with a team with explosive scorers. They look very comfortable. As I mentioned, they were getting that high screen for that elbow jump shot, which I thought was defended well, but that was what they were trying to get, and they were getting it. So when the team's getting what they want and hitting those shots, and you're the team that's obviously supposed to be the defensive-minded team that's going to be tough and scrappy, I was a little disappointed that we weren't able to get them out of that part, and concerned, a little bit concerned that we can't get some of those big stops like we did earlier in the season, big plays down the stretch. We do have a little bit of a back at home feeling going on here. I think the last. We have a road game at Virginia, some tough home games for sure. But I think that'll be a little bit better for us getting into some of this stuff. But there's a little more concern now just because of once is maybe an accident, but more than once or twice, then you're talking about maybe this is something we need to kind of pay attention to. And I think they will. But it's easier said than done. They got to go out there and do it now.
Yeah, I have concerns about the defense, quite frankly. I mean, the team looks capable of making a deep run in March if they play well on defense, even if they aren't that efficient on offense. But that wasn't the look you saw last night, and that's not the look you've been seeing recently. And anybody watching the Heels can tell the defense has gotten worse. But look at some of these numbers, though. Nearly 3 weeks ago, Carolina was giving up 89.1 points per 100 possessions. Now it's 96.6 since then. And then the 8 games before the loss to Georgia Tech, Carolina had the second best adjusted defensive efficiency rating according to Bart Torvik. In the last 5 games, it's 129. I mean, it's just dropping off amazingly.
What do you think causes that, though? Is it just as simple as not having Seth Tribble for some of those games, and he's one of the better perimeter defenders?
I think the ball screen defense has got to get better. I mean, Syracuse was killing the Heels on the pick and roll last night, beating them one-on-one. They got to figure that out. I mean, having Seth back should help, but I guess he only played 11 minutes last night, and he's got to work himself back into it.
What and do you know what exactly the injury was? They just like an upper injury or something?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know what it was, and he had banged into Okonkwo during the practice, and there were some ill effects from that. And I don't know if I'm allowed to release exactly what it was, but it was more precautionary, making sure he felt 100% before he came back. So he also became one of the best players in Carolina history when he was out, because he was the reason we were struggling. And I do love Seth, and I love what he brings off the bench, but he by no means gets the blame for any of this stuff, or when we play well defensively, it's usually a team. He does a great job individually, but as R.L. is saying, I think our defense as a whole has got to get a little bit more nastier and tougher on some of those things, especially every team's doing a high pick and roll. I mean, they're all doing it. And it often they're bringing up Armando up there to make him do the switch or the show, and that's what they want. So again, we got to find a way to take away things that they want to do. We can't just keep on letting them do that. That's for sure one of the things we got to work on.
For Seth, Carolina hasn't said it, but it pretty much sounds like it was a concussion.
Okay. Because at first I didn't think he was playing last night, and then I saw him in the second half. So I don't remember him really being in there in the first half, and then he popped up in the second half. I'm like, oh, Seth is playing tonight. So even if he was out there in the first half, it wasn't much of an impact or anything like that. Sometimes you just have a bad night, and see, that's another thing too. I'm kind of concerned more that I'm not concerned, because it feels like the losses Carolina's had, they weren't exactly like bad nights for Carolina so much. The Georgia Tech one, though, they just missed all the free throws and couldn't hit any threes, basically. That seems to be the formula to beat this Carolina team, if they just can't hit their shots or you hit everything that you throw up. So it's almost all or nothing. But I'm a little concerned about the aggressiveness off and on of Armando Bacot. Because it feels like when you have a game where Bacot is super aggressive from the very beginning, and the whole team is let's dump it into Bacot from the jump and kind of get him motivated and going, then they kind of turn into that rolling downhill offense, scoring 90 points and that kind of thing, and the defense kind of picks up from it. When you have to find him in the game, and start forcing it to him because you weren't earlier, that's when it seems like the offense kind of stagnates a little bit, and that's something where that's really more Armando than anything else. He's going to get 14, 16 points or whatever being out there, but I think it's better when it's aggressive Armando scoring 18 than just, passive Armando kind of out there and deferring to RJ and everyone else and scoring 12 or 14 throughout the game. He seemed to be bothered last night about the zone, which is unusual because Bacot typically has pretty good games against Syracuse. They didn't really do anything differently defensively. I don't know. It was just weird. It feels like the past couple of times we've seen Syracuse, we kind of knew what to do with the 2-3 zone. And last night it felt like we just forgot how to play against it. So I don't know what to do with that, to be honest. It's a weird conference. It's a weird conference because I'm seeing stuff like the Mountain West might get 6 teams into the NCAA tournament. And I'm sitting there looking at the ACC as I try to pull up the current standings here. I'm looking at the ACC trying to figure out what in the world is going on, because now I'm looking at the top of the standings here. You got Carolina at 11-3, Duke right behind them at 10-3, and then you have this glut right after that with Syracuse, Wake, Pitt, who Pitt beat Virginia last night, which was a bit of a surprise. Florida State's in the mix. Clemson's still lurking back there. Miami, kinda. We see Virginia Tech on Saturday. Who knows what's going to happen there? Out of that group there, if you had to pick a team outside of the top 2, Carolina and Duke, if you had to pick a team to make it to championship Saturday in the ACC tournament as it stands right now, from Miami up on the standings, who would you want to ride with? Because all of them are intriguing. All of them have pluses and minuses, but it feels like there's a number of tournament teams in here. I don't think all of them are going to get in, but matter of fact, I didn't even realize Pitt's up to 5 in the kind of tied with NC State. But who would you pick, Pete, out of take away Carolina, take away Duke? Who would you pick to be your most likely suspect to show up on championship Saturday out of this pack of 6, 7 teams?
Yeah. That's a good question. I haven't seen Virginia yet. I know they've been playing extremely well. If I'm allowed to pick them just based on what I know they're on a kind of a roll. But I like Clemson. I like how Clemson's kind of set up with their strong post presence down there with those couple guys and some good guard play. I probably would go with Virginia just because they seem like they're kind of getting back to their old ways with that. I mean, they beat, I think it was Miami, had like 38 points in the game or something. So
yeah,
if they're playing defense like that again, that's always a tough game. And I think Clemson is always pretty solid, especially this year with their post play. So that's a good question, though.
The only thing I'm worried about with Virginia is, of course, they're scoring. They've always had issues scoring with that defense, except for 2019 when they won it all. But they actually had, first round NBA draft picks playing at that point, multiple ones when they won the national championship. R.L., when you look at that group, excluding Carolina and Duke, who's the one team you think might have the best shot to get the ACC championship Saturday night?
I've got to go with Virginia because never doubt Tony Bennett. I mean, earlier in the season, they didn't look good. They didn't look that great last night against Pittsburgh, but I would have to think Virginia would be the one to, other than Carolina or Duke, who might make it to Saturday night in Washington. And as far as how many teams the ACC gets, all the projections now say 4: Carolina, Duke, Clemson, and Virginia. You would like to think that somebody else would slip in, but I just don't know who that would be. Maybe Wake Forest?
I would think. Well, Wake doesn't really have any non-conference wins. They're going to have to beat Duke or somebody maybe this week to get a quality, quad one. I keep seeing Clemson pop up too. Did Clemson beat somebody earlier in the non-conference slate to keep their name floating here? Because I can't really recall, other than Carolina.
I think they beat Alabama.
Alabama. We beat Alabama too. Actually, was it Alabama? Yeah, because they were undefeated when we saw them, wasn't it? No, it wasn't Alabama. Was it? I can't remember. No. It was back in December. But I'm just looking at our standings. I understand State hasn't really defeated anyone for a major signature win. That's their knock. Same with Florida State. Clemson has a couple of signature wins, which is why they're still floating in there. But in the conference, they're 6-6, and they're sitting 7th place. So it's kind of weird. And then you got Pitt, who's won 4 straight. They just knocked off a ranked top 25 team in Virginia. They beat Duke. They have some quality wins. If Pitt stays on a roll here, honestly, I might go with Pitt. They're a really rugged team. I like the way they play defense. Capel has them playing pretty well. It's the time of the year you want to kind of go upwards as opposed to plateau out or going the other way. And it feels like Pitt's kind of trying to figure some stuff out, and they can kind of have a say in what happens in the ACC going forward. They're 2-2 against top 25 teams. And realize Carolina's 5-2 against AP top 25 teams. So, and I thought I saw a stat last night where Carolina and I think Creighton are the only 2 teams that have 6 conference road wins in the country right now. So, the fact that top 10 teams keep losing on the road to unranked teams this year, what do you guys think that says about the state of college basketball as a whole? Because it does feel like the past couple of years we've moved away from having juggernauts to like almost having like mid majors. You're worried about some mid majors that might go on, Sweet 16 runs, which would be absurd like 20 years ago. What are your thoughts on the state of college basketball today and what you're seeing where it feels like a top 10 team loses like every other night?
No doubt. I think if you're not Connecticut, that's the only team I feel really confident with that they're going to show up every night.
Purdue.
Everyone else, it seems like there's any given night you don't come and bring it against any of these teams, you might have a chance of losing. So yeah, I think the parity is undeniable in that sense. Even that Purdue's probably closer to UConn than the Pac, but I think once you get past those two, just what we've seen has proven the fact that there's no consistency in that top 10 as far as dominating any of their opponents. So, who
do you trust, R.L.? Or do you? Because it was Carolina a couple weeks ago. Now I don't know if I trust Carolina.
UConn would probably be the only one, and they've had close games that you didn't expect as well. But this is the kind of season where, last season it was Florida Atlantic and San Diego State. I would not be surprised at all if you have a team that nobody is talking about right now makes the Final Four just because of this trend of top 10 teams losing to unranked teams. So who that might be, I don't know. It could be somebody like Indiana State. Who knows?
Jeez.
I had mentioned when we were playing so well with that big streak that we needed to lose some games. And I really do believe in the end, this could help us in the end, because we could be that team that gets hot again back in March. So it's going to be like R.L. said, it can be any a number of teams that just gets hot at the right time. Once you get past those initial two, there'll be two other guys in the Final Four that maybe we don't expect.
And I know there's some Duke fans out there praying for Carolina's downfall and that they're not back and yada, yada, yada. This Carolina team is better than the previous two iterations of Carolina. So I'm not really worried about them falling off or anything like that. They have the resume. They've shown that. I mean, they're a clear lock for a 2 seed right now. And depending on what they do the next 2 weeks, they can still – I think there's like 4 teams that are fighting for 2 1 seeds because, like y'all said, Purdue and UConn seem to be locks on the 1 line. But then after that, you've got Carolina, Tennessee, Arizona. I'm missing one. I don't know if I put Duke on that in that group of 4. What did I say? Tennessee, Carolina, Arizona, Kansas, maybe. I don't know, but there's 3 or 4 teams that are like right there that have been just kind of. They get to number 3, they lose, they fall to like 7. They win a couple of games, they lose, but they stay around the top 10. Even with this loss last night for Carolina, I don't really expect them to fall much further than 10 or 11, if even that, depending on what happens against Virginia Tech on Saturday. So the rankings don't really mean anything at this point in the middle of February. It's really more about do you know what you have? Like, what are you? Do you have an identity? That kind of thing. And I think Carolina does. I do think not having Seth Tribble messed up the rotation a little bit. Because one of the things I realized during that streak, we were really healthy. We didn't really have any injuries during that streak of winning. So even if it's somebody on the bench, like the first guy off the bench, whoever gets hurt, it kind of disrupts the rotation a little bit. Because Paxton Wojcik kind of fell out the rotation for a little bit there, and then you have to stick him back in, and it kind of, I don't know, it just made shifts different. It made like combos different, and then you saw them trying to get him back into gameplay last night, but he still didn't really play very much. So I'm not saying he's like Pete was saying, I'm not saying he's the reason why we've lost all these games. But I do think him being an important part of the bench and not being there and you take that out, that has to bother chemistry a little bit. And I think Carolina overlooked some of these teams. I think that after the Duke win, I think they looked at it like they could kind of just walk into a game and pick it up when they wanted to. And we had raved about how they were a second half team and they would come out and boom, hit the gas in the second half. And we haven't really seen that in the past a couple of games, although last night they did get the game tied at 64 apiece in the second half with a push after missing their first 10 shots. So they didn't make it easy on themselves by any means. They have.
I noticed that Hubert Davis was playing the bench more for a long period of time, but he seems to be reverting back to his tendency of playing a short bench. There were 3 starters, Ryan, RJ, and Harrison Ingram, played all 20 minutes of the second half. And, this is the second straight game where the Tar Heels haven't executed in the final minutes. And they survived it at Miami, couldn't survive it last night in Syracuse. And you wonder if the guys are getting tired at the end. I mean, Ryan played all 40 minutes, and he had 3 turnovers in the last 2 minutes.
I did notice that some of their jumpers, Cadeau in particular, were short, like front of the rim type stuff. And a lot of times, to me, that's an indication of tired legs, that you're not getting the ball there. I didn't think about that in terms of him not using the bench the same way he was during the win streak. Because guys like did Jalen Winters play last night? I'm trying to think.
Yeah, he did. He played well, and in Washington, they played short minutes, but they both scored pretty well and hit some decent. Washington had a big 3, a big rebound, a big stop. So I'm kind of with R.L. on that one. I like to see those guys get some more time, especially if for no other reason, to give the guys a little bit of a break for that push in the final minutes. But it's been a little bit tight. I noticed when the games are tighter, if there's ever a lead, he'll sub a little bit more. But if it's a tight game kind of throughout, there's a little bit less of that subbing going on. But Yeah, we'll see going forward. That could be a big part of how far we go.
You know what? You're absolutely right. His pattern with substitutions, usually like first half, if they're up 5-6, he'll bring in Winters, he'll bring in Washington, he'll bring in Wojcik and give the starters a little bit of a breather. And a lot of times the bench will hold the lead before the starters get back in. He rarely does it when they're down or when they're trying to climb back into a game. And it may very well be that those guys got those minutes last night because they were in a hole most of the game. And that's most of your scoring right there. And Cormac scored, 18 last night? RJ had 19. And Armando and Harrison Ingram both chipped in 14 apiece. Again, I think this team goes as far as Armando Bacot takes them. You're back for a reason. I don't think it was to be a complimentary player. I need you like it's 17, 18 a game going forward. Like, demand the ball. Like, I mean, that's why you're here. Like, literally, and the offense probably should run through him a little bit. RJ's going to get his shots regardless. Like, you don't have to really worry about catering to get RJ his shots. Like, that's not really RJ's game. RJ can get hot and score 8 straight real quick, 3-minute stretch or whatever. Don't worry about him. You have to make offense for Armando. He can't create it for himself. You've got to run it through him. And when you do that,
there was one particular possession toward the end of the game where they got the ball inside the Armando, and I'm thinking, okay, make a move, score, and he tossed it back out to the perimeter.
Yeah,
and that was one of those occasions where you got a height advantage. Carolina needs a bucket here. Go get it. And I didn't really understand why he tossed it back out.
It's almost like mentally, for whatever reason, that zone was bothering him last night where he wasn't being aggressive. And it's just weird because he's played Syracuse now 5 years. He knows what it is. Like, he knows what I mean, they've kind of figured it out. The Carolina's the one team I was like, they kind of know how to play the 2-3, the Syracuse version of it anyway. They kind of know what to do. And maybe they beat them by 36 last time they saw them. Maybe they just came into it thinking, oh, this team is garbage. We'll be fine. And they hit a hot team. Again, you're not going to beat a whole lot of teams shooting 47% from 3 for the night and 63% from the field. And you missed your first 10 shots of the second half. I mean, you're lucky to get as tied up when you did in the second. So everyone just kind of relax, calm down. It's going to be okay. Shout out to the multiple people that ruined my evening last night on the drive home. I don't know why I thought I could make it home without finding out the result, even though I was 5 minutes away from my house, and I still couldn't get back to the house before somebody ruined it for me. So thank you to everyone that texted me and joked with me and everything else about Carolina losing. Fun fact, since the ACC expanded to 20-game conference schedule, no team has won the regular season with less than 4 losses. So I don't think anybody sitting up here thought Carolina was going to go 20-0 in ACC play. So it's no big deal. Still top of the standings. Now, if they lose to Virginia Tech at home on Saturday, I might press the panic button. Yeah, we're on the verge. Our finger is on it, but we haven't pressed it yet. So let's stop it right there. What do you expect to see Saturday, guys, in the Dean Dome? I haven't seen Virginia Tech this year either. What are you guys looking forward to? What's a key to that game for you, for Carolina? What's something that they need to do to show you that they're kind of righting the ship?
I need a quick start. I need them to limit Virginia Tech's runs. I need a dominating win, to be honest, just because of where we have been lately. I need something that proves to me that these guys are buying back in, and we're going to lock some teams down, and it just starts with who is ever next. And to me, that's going to be a big one. If we squeak out a win by 5-6 points, or heaven forbid we lose, then that button is getting pushed, especially if we lose. But I think I need a dominating, convincing win to kind of get me back on the page that this team can do it defensively, and that we're all on the same page offensively. So that's what I need.
Yeah, the quick start is big, and then also you look back at the Miami game. You got a quick start, but you gave it up. Second half, you got a big lead, gave it up. Yep. They need to finish teams off, kind of like they did in the home game against Syracuse. But it'll also be interesting on Saturday. Tyler Nickel has been starting for Virginia Tech, and he's going to be motivated coming back to the Smith Center. And you also know he's got the ability to hit a bunch of perimeter shots. So that'll be a really interesting dynamic on Saturday.
That's the script right there, because that usually if somebody comes into Carolina and they score 30 points, whatever, and they're just red hot from three or keeping their team in the game, it's usually somebody that either was in the state of North Carolina playing high school ball and didn't get recruited by Carolina, or something happened and they're from Charlotte and just never got a look. He played here and kind of got, not chewed out, but actually with Tyler, I think it was more of he chose to go back to Virginia. It was a family situation or something to that effect. Otherwise, I think he might actually be on this roster. But I could see him coming in and hitting 5 threes or something nuts on Saturday. I need to see the defense that we were seeing coming out of December, early January, where they were holding teams to under 70 points and they took pride in it. Remember Armando was saying to Hubert that, we're actually having fun playing defense. Like, I actually look forward to playing defense this year as opposed to something we have to do. Like, I want to do it. I don't think they've been doing that the past week or two. They've lost that somewhere along the way, and I need that back. If they can get back to the defense they were on before, the offense and everything will take care of itself. I'm not worried about that, but let's see the defense get back to where it was a couple of weeks ago and go from there. Carolina taking on Virginia Tech Saturday at the Dean Dome. It is a 2:00 tip-off, if I'm not mistaken, on the ACC network. Everybody's in action Saturday in the ACC. Yeah, it's kind of become a must-win. Carolina can't drop another game. They drop another game, Duke takes over first place in the standings. They'll be knotted up with Virginia. They've got Virginia coming up here soon as well. So it's kind of turned into a must-win situation all of a sudden for Carolina. So tune in for that. We'll be back next week to recap the week in Heels Hoops here on the Bleav Podcast Network. And I keep forgetting to do the read. I'm supposed to do in the first 2 minutes. I'm just going to do it in the last two. With the NFL playoffs ending and the NBA season in full swing, BetOnline has you covered with all the up-to-the-second odds, news, and scores. With additional odds, lines, trends, and info on both desktop and mobile, you can access the world's best wagering information anytime. Head there today to get in the action and see all the updated odds. Remember to use the promo code Bleav, BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts, and that's where we'll actually end Bleav in Heels Hoops for today. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there. Enjoy it with your loved ones. R.L. Bynum, Pete Chilcutt, I'm Desmond Johnson. You've been watching and listening to Bleav in Heels Hoops podcast here on Bleav Podcast Networks.